recording, and I'm gonna go full
Alright.
screen as usual. Cool. Okay, welcome to everyone to another podcast here. Sorry. It's going to be a podcast about a cool little topic that I found interesting in games these days. I am joined, of course, by Mr. Slowly. How you doing, man?
Yo, I'm chilling, bro.
I'm good. I'm happy. That we're getting closer to. It's getting colder, but at least it's
Oh yeah, for
feeling
sure.
like we can snuggle up real soon. Nice fire going and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
anyhow, yeah, today's topic is going to be about mapping. Basically, how we've used them, like both. It's kind of resembles how we use them in real life in games. There's not really much of a difference because even since our early human existence, we've always wanted to have this sort of rudimentary way of showing where to go or how to reach your destination. Like we always had some sort of way. Maybe you drew it in the sand, maybe you left it on some cave painting or whatever in the olden days.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was always a way we kind of just try to show where to go, basically. And we had to have this sort of knowledge. And the function in maps in games has really been the same. It's been at its most basic form, literally a map. It's told you where to go. It's told you where the objectives are. It's told you where the quests are. It's told you, what region you're in, how it looks, and all that. And it's just representing the game world. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is kind of how games are played. But games have this cool ability, obviously, to take everyday normal things and convert them into something cool that can be incorporated into a game mechanic, or just to make a game more fun. And maps are actually no different. It's a little bit of a more on the surface it might look like a map, but underneath there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it, and that they are functional for. So yeah, how did that start? How did we become so familiar with maps in our games? Yeah, that journey starts now. And it will start probably because if we're looking at it again at surface value, a map represents a game world. So with that, I'm pretty sure either you and me, we have our favorite maps, which means we have a favorite game world. Now, what would you say is your
Yeah.
favorite game world?
Either Ghost of Tsushima or uh, probably Arkham Asylum.
Those are
Like
actually
Batman Arkham
really solid
Asylum. I
options,
like its map.
actually. Those are actually really solid
Yeah.
options. Ghost of Tsushima had that really nice kind of landscape of Japan with a lot of different regions. Um, very, very artistic and well made and all that. That was quite a good one. Arkham Asylum actually as well. That whole city, the whole city of Gotham, you could actually like um, start to memorize it as you played more with Batman and all that. Like literally, you can kind of have this
Yeah.
whole layout of Arkham Asylum in the back of your head. It's actually quite really good ones. I think also, as you mentioned, a lot of times, a lot of modern game worlds have become really good over the years. Like obviously, we have the biggest
Oh yeah.
and best technology now to do all that, but like a lot of modern gaming worlds have stood out for me. I'm pretty sure there's like a million you can think about, or a million more that you can like name here. But I wrote down here the two narrow ones, the two very memorable ones I have is I think Cyberpunk 2077, the whole Night Cities thing.
Oh yeah.
Same thing, actually, kind of also similar to what you think in Arkham. Like Arkham's in Cyberpunk and Night City, you have all these bright lights, and it's trying to showcase all of this. Like it's kind of like a Vegas setting where it's like all this wonderful stuff, and you can see all the glamour and stuff of it. But like if you look deeper into the city, it's just crime, it's poverty, it's freaking like no one's living nicely. Everyone's
Yeah.
living like a living hellhole, and it's sort of like a dystopian thing like that. It's just really, really haunting in that way. And the game, I was thinking about the game the other day again, and I still can't get over it. It's that game is sitting in the back of my
Yeah.
head still to this day. Honestly, like how well it was done. I can't wait for Phantom Liberty. Actually, that's gonna be big as soon as
Isn't it
that
meant to be
drops.
releasing sometime this year?
It is. I'm really kind of just. I don't. I want to help. I want to root for it, but I do want to stay patient with it. But I do want to root for it and hope they can send off
Yeah.
Night City in a very,
Because
very good
you
way.
don't want to get your hopes up and then like it's a letdown, you know?
again, again. They did it
Yeah.
again, bro. They did it again. How? And then the second one I wrote down
Yeah.
was Red Dead Redemption. That was,
Oh yeah.
in terms of a
Classic.
gaming world, that was actually pure Wild West. This you've got the wilderness of the whole Americas back in those days. Everything is kind of just still settling in. Everyone's still enjoying those open plains, the wildness of it all. And it's really nice to see also cities being implemented, especially in Red Dead Redemption 2. We got bigger cities like Saint Denis, which is more technological forward, but you also got like the ones from the old Red Dead games like Armadillo, Tumbleweed, next to like near Mexico and all that. And it's got really good. It just captures that time era so perfectly. So that's what I've got. But as I said,
Yeah.
there's a million other gaming worlds you can name out here that
Can
are
I
that
can
are
I
really
name
good.
a few?
Yeah,
Can I name one
throw
more?
throw the names down.
Okay. So for me, a map that I remember like from the back of my hand or whatever is
Mm,
GTA Vice City. Bro, I have played that game so many times. Like I understand. Like I don't even need a map. Like I know the map off by heart. Like
yeah,
I've played it that much.
I think you can say that for a lot of GTA games. Vice City is one. Liberty City probably. San
Well,
Andreas. San Andreas would be there.
for me personally, it's only Vice City. Like
Mm,
I was only able to get familiar with Vice City, with Los Santos, and not really with San Andreas. Only like the beginning part of the map, not
yeah,
like the rest. You know?
yeah. Like I said, I think it's also because they are laid out, especially with Vice City and Liberty City, they are laid out like real life cities. They're supposed to
Yeah,
resemble real life cities. So like it becomes very memorable in that sense because it imitates real life. So it starts to become like that thing where you can. It's almost like in real life when you're trying to navigate and find your way to a location. If you drive enough times to it, you're gonna memorize the exact streets to take,
oh
the
yeah,
exact like route to go,
yeah,
whatever. No, it's honestly like also you are right in there. The GTA games have done a very good job of imitating a good game world where it's a sprawling
yeah.
city
They have.
or whatever it might be. Ah, what are the other ones? Far Cry 4 had a quite nice game world. I wouldn't say it's too memorable because it was just a standard run of the mill one, but it was nicely balanced with the Far Cry 3 also had a pretty decent game world where I think it's just cool that they've kind of separated the two entities like that. They've done it with Far Cry 3 and 4, where it's a North Island and a South Island, and certain things happen on
Yeah,
both sides. And then Far Cry 4, you had some regions, I can't really put my finger on it, but some regions are like the more open plains, the like kind of calmer side of the whole Kairat region, and then the northern side where you go up later is the Himalayas. It's more dangerous, even with wildlife, even with terrain, all of that. It's got a pretty good game world.
yeah.
Skyrim obviously is an obvious one, very obvious. Tamriel, I mean,
True.
is pretty. Or just Skyrim itself is pretty great. You can say it also for the other ones like Morrowind and all of those. I think they've also got pretty good game worlds. But honestly, like yeah, as time goes on, I think we're gonna see more and more of those that are gonna come in between. Um, and obviously, like a gaming world also leans into its own lore, but obviously they've written tons of stuff when it comes to the
Yeah,
lore of a land and stuff like that. That the map kind of also can convey. A map can tell you a lot about the lore of a game as well, which especially in RPG
yeah, for
games.
sure.
But yeah, we have to track back way earlier than the modern stuff that we are talking about to see the first time that maps were in games, well, technically were in games, because obviously it came forth in a medium way before video games. It came already as a thing in board games. Board games have had maps also for the longest time, have used maps in some sort of sense for the game. Sometimes, literally, the board itself, you can argue, was the map. Um, so, like, that's kind
Yeah,
of
that's
also
what
a
I would
thing.
think.
Yeah. So
That's what
like
I would think. Like the board itself is a map.
yeah, it's kind of a philosophical question I've been thinking about. But the more I think about it, the more I agree with it. Like take the game Snakes and Ladders for example, as a board. The board is literally a bunch of ladders, a bunch of snakes, a starting point, an ending point. But technically, that's kind of a map as well because it's telling you exactly where you start. It's telling you exactly the destination and how you're gonna get there. and along the way it's telling you all of these like specific points where snakes and ladders are. So technically
Yeah.
that's a map. Same goes for something like Monopoly, where you're like navigating around a board, but it's also a map because you can tell exactly where you are sitting and landing and where your properties and stuff are, just like a map. And it starts to like enter that philosophical territory. But I want to look at more board games that use map as a functional component, where you maybe use the map. So technically, yes, Monopoly, you use the map. But is there any other games you can think about, like where you had to use a map in a board game?
Uh, Not really. No,
It,
I can't think of any.
it's difficult, I think, to put your finger on it. There were some. I think if you played a lot of treasure games, that would definitely need a
Yeah, I
map. And
suppose.
technically D&D, but D&D is more an imagination game where the map gets made up by the dungeon master. But the one example I could think about where maybe something like that could happen is Battleship. Now, Battleship obviously
Oh yeah.
it's technically a map because like you're using your map to tell where the enemy ships are. Where it's like I think that's a really clever way of doing it because you have your pins and stuff, and you have the spots on the map, and you kind of can figure out if you've hit a few pins or if you've missed a few pins, their ships must be hiding somewhere else. So
Yeah.
there are some games that the board games that really moved, and they started to get a hang of it. I think that was a cool thing. Like Battleship really propelled it forward and stuff like that, where they started to get the hang of we can use maps for something else. Um, but yeah, I think the other thing also was arcade games of that era. When arcade games came about, that was literally the only way they could probably have a map in a game because of the limitations at the time. Was the game had to be like the screen basically would have to be the map. In the same sense, like for
Yeah.
example, Pac-Man. Pac-Man is a maze. The whole screen is literally just a maze of Pac-Man. But technically, it's also a map because it's telling you where the ghosts are. It's telling you where the pellets are you have to go collect. It's telling you where the power-ups are. So yeah, it's kind of in that way that
Yeah.
it's serving as a map for yourself. And some other games, I think, technically, if you're looking at back in those, but yeah, and then some game developers did think about, we should have a map in the game, but they thought of it in the inverse way because they couldn't put it in the game. They thought, we'll just, give the player a way of making a map. So much so that like there were these games called Wizardry. I don't know if you've ever heard of Wizardry. Um,
Oh no.
it was a game series that started in the 1980s, but it's pretty much as a lot of the RPGs of that time or the adventure series of that time. Um, it was that Wizardry was based off of Dungeons and Dragons. Same way that the text adventures at that time, Colossal Cave Adventure and Zork, were also based off of Dungeons and Dragons, but all these games had an interesting thing in common, but mostly Wizardry. Wizardry, when you ordered the game or bought the game and stuff, because it had a retail release, in the box with the game,
Right.
you literally got a set of graph paper and a pencil. Because what Wizardry basically did was it was a series of dungeons that got generated, and like you had to like navigate your way through the dungeon and like kill enemies and go on quests and stuff like that. But the
Huh.
game designer literally gave you a piece of paper and pencil so that the idea was you could draw yourself the map and like remember it that way. Because it's like, well, I can't do it for you, but I'll give you a pen and paper.
Yeah.
That was that was funny. That was funny because the map didn't change, but like I mean, it's at the same time point in time. It's not like I could go on Google and find a map. It's 1980. I couldn't ask my mate either.
Yeah.
I'd have to like go to his house and watch him play the game and then try and memorize it in my head or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it was a different time, so that's literally probably what they did. People just sat down, scribbled, started scribbling, and figured out the map like that. And it would be only way later that games like Bard's Tale 3 use something like an auto map, which would be the evolution of this, where this game would like as you navigate the dungeon and stuff like that, it would start to update as you explore the map. So it will take doors, it would take layers if you're
All
going through
right.
multiple floors and collectibles that you pass and maybe didn't collect. So like there was a system that eventually came out of this, especially for I think dungeon crawlers and stuff like that. Because if you look at like even Minecraft Dungeons now, Minecraft Dungeons has the map laid out for you, but then as you
Yeah.
pass points, it will tell you when you've passed a cave. It will tell you if you've passed a chest or if you passed loot, it like makes those little dots on the map. But that's literally what an auto map is. That was now the evolution of this, where they've gone from scribbling on paper. So for dungeon crawlers, this was kind of a very useful transition. But then obviously to get real maps, like how maps actually work in video games, we had to wait all the time until the home consoles really made their appearance, because yeah, that's like literally the first time where we had this power, we had this kind of like ability to overcome the limitations that were there before. But let's see if you can maybe guess who it was. I will give you a clue and say that Nintendo was the first people who made a map in game. Which games do you think it was?
Mario.
Mario is one of them. Mario is one of them. There's two answers actually, so Mario is definitely one of them.
Okay. Man, I'm not that out of touch with Nintendo games. Maybe Legends of Zelda? Was that like back then?
Yeah, it was, and it's a very safe guess as well, because that's absolutely correct as well. So the first answer, as you said, was Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. 3 was the first what they call the overworld map. So if you played a Mario game before, obviously you go through the level and stuff like that. Once you come out of the level, you have this like overworld map where you can see which levels you are going to or have been towards, and like you can like from the overview map, you can kind of see like if you want to replay a level, if you want to go to the next level, or like as you go from the Mushroom Kingdom to Bowser's Castle or whatever. It had this kind of like route.
Right.
That was like an overworld map, not a functional map per se. Well, like no, you can use the map to travel to other places, but it's not a map that like followed you all the way into levels and stuff like that. But it used as a way to like get to places. Like I want to go there, or I want to go to this level, I want to go to that level. It kind of like acts like a bus stop in a way. So what was that? Oh no, the time. It's been around for, because Super Mario Bros. Came out in 1988, so 35 years technically is when the first true
that
map.
long ago.
That is actually very long ago for a map. I'm actually also surprised by that date. And then when the more important, I'd say this one's a bit more important. The second answer, as you said, Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past came out in 1991. That's also like, I'm going to do math in my head now, 32 years ago. So 32 years ago, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past also did a map. But obviously this one, in this RPG form, the map would kind of be a guide to navigate your way through the whole level. Like the map, like you could open the map at any point in the level. That's what made it revolutionary. You can go through any level at any point, and you can open the map, and it'll tell you exactly where the quests are, where the NPCs are, where collectibles are, and like where other things are, like someone's house or whatever. It like had these markings on the map and which routes to take. So it'll show Hyrule in a sense. Like it could show the whole of Hyrule, which was really important for the time, and it's kind of like very influential for obviously what we know for RPG games going forward. Other ones also, so like even if the RPG games at the time, Baldur's Gate, Dragon Quest, and Fallout, which came also in the 90s, all three of them use the same method of being able to open a map and look at what's like around you in the level, and then go forward from there. So this is that already making a huge impact, if not even to talk about every single other genre out there that started to use this going forward. The ability to open a map in a level at any point and any time. Let me just see here. And it's also kind of the other thing about it, because we are now able to open maps and like display maps and stuff like that, I think it also gives a map designer or something a lot of free license to also play around with the game. Because obviously, not every single map, as we talked about Game Worlds now, not every single map's going to look the same. For example, if you were to open your map of Vice City, what's it going to look like? It's going to look like a city layout. It's going to be full of streets, full of networks, full of buildings, very more modern like map thing, and it's going to look like something, as we said, similar to real life. Networks and networks of streets, buildings, landmarks, what you have it. If you look at a map from even say Fallout, Fallout's map is going to be barren. It's going to be dry. It's going to be monotone because obviously it's a wasteland. There's not going to be much on the map. There's not going to be much like remarkable about the map, but that's the point of it. It's a barren thing, and it has these very few landmarks dotted in between to tell you the scale of like the destruction. But it's very effective in that way because it gave the map designer a way to design the map, and then when you display it, you can see all that. So
Yeah.
that was also a cool little thing, obviously, that made. But bonus points as well. Super Metroid, another Nintendo game, was also the first game to use a minimap in 1994. So like Super Metroid,
Oh damn.
have you ever played Metroid games?
No, but I've been meaning to at some point.
So yeah, it's a basically like it's just a little subgenre in of itself because like Metroid games are kind of like puzzle games or platformer games. But Metroid or
Right.
Metroidvania games, as sometimes the subgenre is called. Metroidvania games, I think, and I'm hopefully I am speaking a bit under correction here, but I hope I'm right. Metroid games are basically like it's a puzzle platformer game where it's not like everything you do helps you go forward in the thing. It's like kind of the whole level is like is like one big puzzle. So in the sense that, like for example, maybe at the beginning of the level, there's something you can't solve yet, like it's a step in maybe the puzzles that you can't solve yet, so you have to come back to it. So say you
Yeah.
progress through the level, you find something somewhere in the level, and like, this leads back to the beginning, and you backtrack through the level to go solve that puzzle, and you keep doing that through the level. So that level of
Oh.
backtracking, where you go through the level and you backtrack and you like solve stuff incrementally, but they're not necessarily like forward. They're like forward, back, whatever. Like it has a very sort of like organization like that. That's a Metroidvania subgenre. Metroid games, obviously, very popular for that. Castlevania games, I believe, was also quite popular for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's quite an interesting genre. I would say Metroid is quite a good game to try at least once. It's one of those try at least once games if you can somehow get your hands on it. But there is now one interesting question at that point. So, because like a logical question. So, you have your map now. You have your
Right.
RPG game. You're playing an RPG game. You open your map. You can see everything. You can see your quests. You can see your NPCs. You can see your collectibles. But now, logically, how do you see them? How do you know they're there? How did you know they were there at that exact location before you even entered the level? Like, kind of
I don't
defies a
know.
little bit of
Maybe you just
logic
kind of
because
have
I
the
mean,
expectation.
yeah, like it defies logic a little bit because I mean, like your character just randomly knew where everyone was despite never
Yeah.
having been in this town before.
Yeah. Exactly.
So obviously, like like not an oversight. I'm sure they knew about it, but it's like they just thought at the time, oh, we'll just show where everything is, and then people can never get towards that. But then, as they went on, it's like, wouldn't it be more fun if we don't tell them necessarily where everything is? So one of
Yeah.
my like personal favorite mechanics in games that I'm going to talk about now is the fog of war mechanic. Now, I'm sure you've heard of fog of war mechanics before. Like, I know you know what it is. Maybe you just don't know the name of it.
No, I don't know the name of it.
Okay, you don't know the name of it. Basically, fog of war mechanics in maps is basically your map starts off as blank, but like as you move through the map, your map fills
Oh,
itself in.
is it as you explore,
Yes,
it clears up as you explore the map?
yes. That's a fog of war mechanic.
Okay, yeah.
So obviously, a lot of games we also know at this point have that mechanic. Like I think even like the games you mentioned, Ghost of Tsushima has that, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it does.
Where it literally like it fills the map up as you walk through it. So that's a fog of war mechanic. It's one of my favorite ones. It's a personal little just a nice little touch I think to games because it encourages exploring in that way. Like sure, I
Yeah.
think in a normal map I'd still go and explore, but if I look at a map, like it's OCD kind of, if I look at a map and I can pretty much exactly see where I have not explored, obviously I want to go there because I'm like, ooh, what's here? Like it's just one
Yeah.
of those like internal things you do as humans. Um, and I think also using fog of war mechanics to your advantage in games has also been quite interesting for a lot of games, like for a lot of genres even. and for lots of games, it's delivered interesting mechanics. So, for example, the Civilization game series, where you build your cities and you upgrade them and you try to take over the world, that uses a fog of war mechanic. So you don't know, because obviously that's a multiplayer game, but you don't know where everyone's base is at the beginning of the game. Like, it's not spelled out
Ah,
for you that the guy's base is like on the other continent. You don't know that. He might be on the same continent as you, and you might have a conflict way sooner. But your job is to go figure out where their base is so that you know how to plan and you know how to develop and you know how to conquer them. Same goes for real time strategy games. A lot of real time strategy games adopted this mechanic. One of my favorites also being Age of Empires. Age of Empires obviously is like you enter all these ages, like you start in like Bronze Age or something, and then you go to Iron Age, and then you go to Industrial Age. Like, I can't remember all the ages, but like the point is, you want to
yeah.
develop your things, but you do need to figure out where your opponent also is with his base. And then what you do is you literally send like an explorer out, or even one unit. You just send them, go walk, so that my map fills up, and so I can figure out where this guy's base is. Just so you know, just for like so you have that knowledge. And if you don't get spotted while doing it, you can get the ambush on them. You can get the jump on them. And that's kind of like where
True.
strategy also starts playing a role into this. Where like fog of war becomes more than just the fact that you haven't explored it. It becomes a kind of a thing about knowledge. Knowing where something is, always not knowing where something is going to have an advantage or
Yeah.
disadvantage to you. So I think it's also implemented really well. And RPGs, some RPGs started to climb on that. Even RPGs that's maybe started out with like maps that just told you where everything is. So, for example, Fallout went into that. Like if you go to Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, all of them had this kind of fog of war mechanic. Like it showed you the map, but it didn't show you any icons on the map if you haven't discovered them yet. So like you have to walk around and you'd get this
Oh,
whole thing like, oh, you've discovered this place. Like let's say you discover a town, or discover a derelict
yeah.
building, or discover some place of significance. It gets marked in your map. And also maybe it does get marked in your map if it's like, let's say for example, if you have to have a quest and you have to travel to a place you haven't been yet, the quest marker will tell you where it is on the map, and then when you get there, you can fast travel to it. So if you discover the place in person, that also unlocks fast travel.
Oh, that's cool.
That's another mechanic, obviously, that Fog of War does a lot. Is that like you have to
Yeah.
actually explore or visit the place before fast travel is unlocked. This is also a thing that RPGs does a lot. Um, Also, another game that, or a few games that did this, the Ubisoft thing. Do you remember the Ubisoft thing that they did with Fog of War, with the radio towers or the viewpoints?
Oh, yeah.
So like your whole
Yep.
map again in a Far Cry game, or more no Assassin's Creed game, in the beginning ones at least, if I remember correctly, is like blank. And then to even see like a region of the map, you scale the viewpoint, you scale the radio tower, you get to the top, you survey it, and it'll tell you about this place, this place, this place, this place.
Yeah.
And then you can like go from there. That one didn't usually unlock fast travel, but it did tell you or reveal places to you that would unlock you fast travel, like safe houses, outposts.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what to use in Assassin's Creed for fast travel, but like anything, I guess. Shops, whatever you owned, I guess. But yeah,
It would usually be like the synchronization points, like where you would
yes,
do the leap of faith. That would be like the spots.
those ones. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about Unity when you had to buy those other shops, those random shops in France, and then
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, I own a cafe. What now? Anyway, but yeah, I don't know about you. I do prefer, as I said, I do prefer Fog of War over normal map. Like some places, a normal map is cool to have. Like if it makes sense story wise. Like for example, Doom has this thing where it has an auto map. Technically, it's an auto map technically, but it's in a sense also a map that reveals everything to you. But Doom, you can say that way because you get the map at an auto map station. Or for example, if you are playing a shooter and you have intel, like you have intel telling you
Yeah.
what the map is and stuff like that. That makes more sense to me. Then it's fine for me to play with a map. But generally, I do like Fog of War more because it encourages exploration. And the games we usually find them in all my favorite game genres that'll be like real time strategy, RPGs, and then some action games and stuff like that might have a fog of war mechanic.
I like them because then they make you explore the map and see what the world has to offer.
It
So
is.
I prefer it.
It is. I think you legitimately, if you have the map already revealed 100% to you, I think legitimately you're going to forget to visit some places. Unless, like, you can remember
Yeah,
to a
or you're just
T
gonna
where
be
you've
like,
been.
oh, bro, it's not worth my time to just go there.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, like, some maps do it also interestingly where I think Red Dead doesn't have a fog of war map, but Red Dead has this kind of, like, cool thing where if you visit places and something significant is places, your map gets, like, drawings on them. Like,
Oh
say,
yeah, I've seen that.
I've seen like I think there's like a whole side quest about like you doing like figuring out who a killer is. Like there's like he's murdering a lot of people and stuff like that. And every time you visit one of the sites where he's murdered people, a drawing will appear on your map of them maybe hanging, of them maybe being like a dead body or something. But like it'll start appearing on your map, and it's for a lot of stuff. Like a lot of stuff, Red Dead does
Yeah,
that. It's quite cool because it looks like an actual map that the guy made, like Arthur or John made, and he was like drawing to like fill in his own map and stuff like
yeah,
that. So I like that quite cool. And then yeah, as we said, as games grew in like scale and detail and stuff like that, and we had more power to be able to display more maps and that, we started to go um, in the direction of making them more bigger and more detailed. And obviously, open world gaming, when open world gaming really took flight, that was obviously the way to go for a lot of games. So we actually now spoke about this, about games trying to recreate a location. We spoke about Vice City, we spoke about Liberty City, we spoke about San Andreas, and we even spoke about Los Santos. All those games are pretty much I think almost all of them are trying to be based in California on real places.
yeah.
Like for example, Los Santos is obviously Hollywood and the city of I guess Los Angeles. San Andreas is also there around, and Liberty and Vice City might be San Francisco or something. But I think all of
I
them are
think
more or less.
I think Vice City is in Miami. I took
Oh, okay,
inspiration from
yes,
that.
that's no, that's true actually. But again, trying to recreate a location, trying to kind of resemble something that like it looks vaguely familiar, but they put their own style and spin on it enough that like it feels like an authentic game world. Um, we did
Yeah,
see that. Obviously, the first people who come to mind is Rockstar because they are rock stars at doing that. Ironically, um, they do a game world or a city game world pretty well. And I mean, like you
yeah,
said,
they do.
look how well you remember Vice City, like at the back of your hand. And how old is Vice City right now?
Oh man, did it come out in 2004?
Let me check. Actually, don't know.
So
I
that's
had
like
San Andreas
19
down as
years. I don't know.
2004. I think San Andreas.
Oh,
San Andreas is 2004. When is Vice City? Out of Was Vice City after San Andreas? It was, if I'm not mistaken.
it was before.
Was it before? Oh man, it's gonna be old.
I'm pretty sure.
Let's see. Let's see. I have to go into the Wikipedia page because I don't want to. It is 2002. It's old, man. That's 21
Ah,
years.
yeah,
That's a really old thing, and you still remember it. You see what I mean about like the effect it can have. And obviously,
yeah,
as time went on, size became also a big thing. I don't know, like size wasn't always everything that matters, but some maps or map makers just went crazy when it came to size. Um,
yeah.
maybe
Like they
even
made it just unbelievably large when they didn't need to.
yeah, it kind of some games it was really cool, and other games it felt like bloat. It really depends on how well map makers can make their games. That like not everything feels like because filling a map with quests and stuff like that doesn't feel good because then it feels like bloat. But if you balance it enough,
Yeah,
it feels really nice. So I'll give an example. Witcher 3 is a very big map. Witcher 3 is about 136 square kilometers. That's like Witcher 3.
holy shit.
Assassin's Creed
Yeah,
Odyssey is 256 square kilometers. Literally
this is insane.
almost
Yeah,
double the size of Witcher 3, and that was like a difference of Witcher 3 came out in 2016. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think, came out in like 2018, 2019. 2 years difference between the two.
That is
And
insane.
one feels like a great game full of nice quests and nice stuff to do, and the other one, I'm gonna be honest, feels like bloat to me. I honestly, at some point, I just felt like I can't do everything in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's just too much. And I think
Yeah.
even Sean complained because he got Valhalla, and he just told me if he only bought Valhalla and nothing else, he'd probably still be playing Valhalla until he died, just because of how much bloat they've put in the game, essentially, or just how much stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's hang on. Let me just let the cat out. you, here you go. But anyway, yeah. So it's a fine balance, but like some people don't care for balance; they care for size because they think a lot of like. I think if you also make a lot of a specific game that you think people are going to spend a lot of time on, or I just like invest a lot of time in, you're going to make it a big map and stuff like that, so you can keep exploring. Or sometimes like games like the map really doesn't matter, like the map size doesn't matter, but it is nice to have a huge map. So let me give you
Yeah,
some examples.
that's true.
What do you think are the big ones out there? If I say, give me a top five biggest maps in games.
Well, I would say The Witcher 3, Assassin's Creed Valhalla,
Huh?
um, Assassin's Creed Unity. That was pretty big for its time.
Mm-hmm.
Even Origins as well.
Yeah, the Assassin's Creed is really grew in size.
What else? Actually, I don't know. I don't know what else.
Yeah, the thing is, like, for this one, I think you have to think a bit out the box because you have to more or less think like, what would you represent on a map that's very big? I'd say that's the biggest thing you need to think about.
Man, I don't know, dude.
All right. So fifth place is The Crew. You know The Crew, right? It's that
Wait,
racing
really?
game from the Ubisoft.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
So you've heard of it. So The Crew, the reason why it's on this list is because The Crew takes place over the entire USA, meaning this game is 5,000 square kilometers, more or less. To give you an idea, Witcher was 136. This game is 5,000. It is almost
That is
50
insane.
times. 50 times almost the size of Witcher 3. In fourth place is Microsoft Flight Simulator, which obviously we know
Yeah,
is,
I'm not surprised.
yeah, that's literally a simulation of Earth, a one-to-one simulation of Earth. So that comes out at
Yeah.
510 million square kilometers. Um,
That's
third
insane.
place is Minecraft. Minecraft, of course, ranks in almost like there's not really a defined number, but there is an end to the world. Like you reach those things they call the Badlands, where like it stops rendering. So more
Yeah.
or less, they'd say around about like billions of square kilometers of maps. Uh, Now we get to the two really big ones. Second place and first place are both space games, because obviously the biggest scale we have out there is space itself. And we don't really measure these in square kilometers anymore because I mean it's impossible. Like this is just too big. But I'll give you
Yeah.
the amount of things. Second place is Elite Dangerous. This is a like both these games actually I've played, but like second place is Elite Dangerous, which is like a space trading game and stuff like that. That game clocks in at 400 billion star systems. Elite Dangerous is literally a 1-to-1 scale of the Milky Way. 1-to-1 scale. It is massive, that game.
That's crazy.
Like I cannot even begin to just try and describe to you how big that game felt to me. Like you can zoom out of the game and like it just felt like you were literally seeing a blur of like the star systems just going past your head. I mean, like that's star systems. That's not like planets. That's star systems with their own planets and stuff inside of it. So that was big. And then I'm not even talking about that was like 400 billion star systems. No Man's Sky is the runaway number one with 18 quintillion star systems.
That's crazy, bro.
That's a million billion, basically. A million billions, basically, put together. That is
Yeah,
like that just pushes it over the edge of like using like I don't like just to put that in perspective from we had so much limitations that we could only have a map on a screen in something like Pac-Man say 40 50 years ago to now where we are mapping more than the Milky Way. More than pretty much anyone ever in gaming, I'm pretty sure, ever explored No Man's Sky. I remember when I played No Man's Sky, you get these, and I'm not joking, this is a real thing. If you discover a star system or a planet in game, you get to name it. You get to name
no
it.
shot.
You get to name it. And remember, this is a game that's been around since 2016. That's about 7 years. And I know it's not the most active fan base. It's like, but it's still an active fan base. That means people are playing this game. A lot of playtime in this game combined. I only started playing it in 2021. I've named 4 planets, which means I was the first player in 2021 to find 4 planets in the game already. And I've only played like that game for about 10, 15 hours. I found 4 planets, which means I was the first person to ever be on those planets in the game. That's insane. Like, I don't know how to explain that. That means that map will never be fully explored. Just never. But that's the sense of scale. Like, some games, scale doesn't matter, which means we have space games, which makes sense, because obviously we can't just have a small map for space games. That's not going to help very much, so that's very good. And something like Microsoft Flight Simulator or Minecraft, or even something like the Crew 2 that's supposed to be representing USA. Scale for them doesn't matter, and they have their stuff to do. But like in other games, like an RPG game, if you have a scale like that in an RPG game, like I think 99% of your map is nothing. Like there's nothing to do.
Yeah, true.
There's no way you're populating your map with quests and stuff like that, where cool things are happening or keeping people invested. So scale and like that of a map, like it's a line you have to tread well. Like I was saying, that's why I felt like Witcher was great. Assassin's Creed Odyssey not so much. Other games also out there balancing it out and all that. But it's yeah. I think that's also just a big thing. Where's my other notes now? Oh yes, there was another problem question in mapping. Now that we have like maps out of the way, we've now gotten to a point where they're big enough to have detail and scale is massive. We can make any type of map of any size that we want, and we can put anything in the map that we want, free like of any limitation. Now, the big thing is maybe a philosophical question. What does maps do for us? Like, how can we have maps influence the narrative we're telling in our story? Like we said in the beginning that like already a map can talk about lore quite a bit, like when it comes to your world and stuff like that. But let's take it even further. Try and define what you would say a map is. What is a map? Real life or game? What is a map?
It's the direction that your character takes throughout his journey.
That's a pretty solid one. That's mostly a natural answer, saying like it's the direction, it's a journey, it's a representation, of the world around you, like representing where I am, what's going on around me, all these like places or important locations and stuff like that. But even beyond that, something important about maps that like when is not always like on surface level as mentioned. In real life, a lot of maps are indirect pieces of power. Now, the reason I say piece of power is think about the center of a map, right? Center of a map is usually telling you what is like the central part of the map and what's going on around it. It's like they're saying the most relevant part of the map, right in the middle. In some senses. So let me give you an example of how also this can affect like real life stuff. Have you ever heard of the Mercator projection map? Or not really?
No.
Mercator projection map is literally a map made by a guy named Mercator hundreds of years back, and it's been used like it's been very revolutionary for its time because it displayed latitude and longitude at right angles to each other. That little 90 degrees here. And traditionally, that was like, okay, well, that's a pretty solid model. Let's all use that in our classrooms. Let's all use that in education and stuff. Slight snag of maps like that. Like you probably learned from your geography teacher in high school from a Mercator map. Slight snag of that map. Because of the right angles, some continents are stretched and some continents are compressed. So on Mercator maps, North America appears much larger than it actually is, and Africa appears much smaller than it actually is. So, like, a lot of times when you look at a Mercator map, some people make the mistake and think that North America is larger or South America is larger than Africa, when in reality, outside of Asia, Africa is the largest continent. It's the second largest continent. But you won't know that when you look at a Mercator map because of that inaccuracy.
Yeah.
And like think about like other things. Like if you even like map makers back then had bias. When you think about like all the map makers in the world, at some point when they were exploring and stuff, all the map makers were European. What do you think was in the center of the map? Europe. Because they were sailing towards other places that they didn't know about. They didn't know about the Americas. They didn't know about Africa. They didn't know about Asia. So they put Europe at the center of the world and started to plot where everything was. But they held Europe at the center. And that's how time zones, I believe, was invented. The Greenwich and all that is at the center of the map.
Damn, okay.
So it became a thing of like bias and power and stuff like that. And even if you look at games, sometimes the center of the map matters. The center of the map in Skyrim, for example, is Whiterun. Now, Whiterun is obviously the first town you end up in after Helgen is burned to the ground and you need to find sanctuary. You go to Whiterun. The first person of power you meet is in Whiterun, the Jarl, and he points you in the direction of where to go to seek counsel and stuff like that to deal with the threat at hand. He points you towards factions and stuff like that. Even in The Witcher, the center of the map is the court of Vizima. Now, the court of Vizima is obviously the residence of Emperor Emir of Nilfgaard, one of the two big factions in The Witcher, Nilfgaard and Redania. In almost all of the endings in The Witcher, except for like one or two, I think it's even just one, Nilfgaard wins the war, which means Nilfgaard becomes the empire of the Witcher world. And their court is in the center of the map. It's also the story that revolves around it because you have to save the emperor's daughter, essentially, that you grew close with, Ciri. Ciri is the emperor's daughter. So, like, you can already see the connection of how powerful like this whole thing is. But yeah, in other games we've also seen like the thing about like I said like factions and stuff like that. Like you can even see in some games like if factions control the map, sometimes we can influence it with our decisions and story-wise and stuff like that. Or sometimes it's just to tell you that there are factions on the map. For example, like if you play Far Cry, it tells you exactly which parts the rebels control, which parts Pagan Min or Vars or whoever controls. When other faction things like Dying Light 2, like the two factions you can end up helping or not helping, you can tell them which parts of the map they control and not. So that way it also kind of balances out. There's also another thing which I don't like all that much that maps sometimes do to try and tell you which are the more dangerous and difficult parts of the map. I think that should be a more natural thing. I think this is a more forced thing they do. But the other thing that RPG started to do is to region lock some parts of the map, which I do not like. It's like in an RPG leveling system, let's say you're level 5. You want to go to one part of the map. Oh no, it's level 10, which means all the enemies there are level 10, and all of a sudden I cannot kill any of them and they can one-hit me. Just because it says level 10 next to their name and the map region is a level 10. That's a little bit annoying. I do not like that when they do that in games. And Assassin's Creed has been starting to do that with, with Origins, with Odyssey, and I'm not sure with Valhalla, but I know for Origin and Odyssey that was around there. I did not like that at all.
Yeah, it can get tiresome because like it's very drawn out.
Like it, I don't know, I don't get it. Like you made an open world, but now you're kind of like forcefully guiding me through the map because like I can't go there unless I go and ridiculously like start leveling up or over leveling myself. So I can't go there. So the natural story goes like this through the map. So like you gave me an open world, but you made it forcefully linear. It's like you tried to be both things at once. Weird thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get that at all when it comes to maps. Um, but yeah, I think there can be more. Is there anything you can think of like that you would like to see more like that in maps, where we start to use more real life stuff that maps have, that like biases, stuff like
Uh,
that?
I think it would be cool to have like more like real life locations get iterated into games.
Mm.
I think that'd be cool.
I think like also it's also cool. It's not as like it's not being used as prominently now, but I would say like to see those augmented reality games. Because at this point, it's just like it's just using the map to like tell you where stuff is, but it's not using the actual features of where you are currently. Like Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Pokemon Go like has those things like it's a park close by to you, or there's like water close by to you, and it'll like use obviously to have those Pokemon, water Pokemon or whatever. But it'd be cool to have like because you're in France, for some reason there's only French Pokemon where you are. Cool little feature. I don't know how Pokemon works. I don't know if there's just French Pokemon or whatever, but maybe that's a cool feature. Um, I think I wrote down here as well. I also like the idea of maybe we should start making games where like maps aren't always 100% accurate. Because in real life, that's sometimes the case.
Ooh, that would be cool.
That's sometimes the case. Like maps aren't accurate. Maps are literally, as I said in the beginning, what we drew down to get to a destination. But some things may have changed over time. You don't know that. Some things like maybe outdated as
Yeah.
all hell. Like remember back then when we freaking thought that like there was when we started drawing maps and it was Pangea. Truth is, bro, we've
Oh,
five
yeah.
continents now, dude. Like it's a long time ago. So I think it would be cool, especially if it came to like other type of games where the map would be really relevant. To have this like super outdated map. You know, looking at this thing is like there's nothing here is like freaking nothing here is like very close to like resembling what's the truth here. So I think that'll be cool if we have more features of maps where it becomes inaccurate or it's just outdated and stuff like that, and we have to kind of piece together. Like the map updates itself over time as we discover more of the real deal. I think that will be cool. There is one game off the top of it, and like I said, maybe indie games have done this more. I'm thinking in AAA game sense. There is one game that does this kind of interesting thing. Fallout 4 had this one region on the map called the radioactive sea. Now the whole thing is it used to be a sea before radioactivity came, and now after radioactivity came, I think it literally dried the entire seabed, and it only had the radioactive stuff. But the uh, in the real life thing, like so in the real life,
Yeah.
no, I'm saying real life now. I meant in the game itself. This was the most radioactive part of the entire world, the radioactive sea. It had so much radiation and stuff like that that literally on your map it looked like this tiny region. When in actual fact, below that you could like explore this much more of the radioactive
Holy,
sea.
that's insane.
Like it wasn't on the map. Like literally, it showed your marker, and your marker was like just stuck at the bottom of the map, but you could keep exploring. And there were like, there was like huge enemies, unique enemies. There were these unique buildings sometimes and stuff, unique landmarks. And I thought like in game, that's kind of a smart thing because like I can do the law in my head for me. I could say the people who made the Pip Boy, who made the map, couldn't obviously go there because it's bloody radioactive and all the dangerous and scary
Yeah.
monsters all down there. Why would they go down there? Because they wouldn't think anyone would go down there. So that's even a logical thing you could put in your story. So I think that's a cool thing. Maybe they should do that more for maps and stuff. Maybe they should try and incorporate that like to be not like 100% accurate. Like I think a lot of games, like obviously they think everything should be correct and everything should be like perfect, but like sometimes it's
Yeah.
more human to be imperfect. Um, what else do I have? Oh, and that's pretty much I think actually all of my podcast. Now the last thing we obviously want to talk about is the future, obviously, of mapping. Do you have any ideas of what you want to see in the future of mapping? any cool ideas you want to see get implemented?
Not really. Like it's not like a huge focus point for me now, so I guess not really.
I had this one cool idea. Like I said, I wanted to inaccuracies thing. I think would be great for like RPGs and stuff like that, or like exploration games. But I'd also like to see if you have maps more as a core mechanic, like what I mentioned with Battleship being a core mechanic, or uh, something like that with a core mechanic. Like, for example, what if you have an what if you have an sorry, I was getting distracted by a splinter. Anyway,
All good, man.
no, what if you have like basically a map, which is like an exploration game, but your maps you have is incomplete, and like your role is to try and chart the map accurately, and you'll get rewarded for that. But the risk is obviously the more you chart the map, you don't know what is there. There could be nothing. There could be really dangerous stuff, or there could be other enemies. Like the random game I've always had in my head, obviously the one that I've divulged towards always when I was thinking about this is imagine a game like in the age of piracy. If you're being this explorer, like what Columbus, Polo, all those people were, and your job was to like go figure out what is out there, you know, you're coming down with your map and you're trying to like figure out, okay, what's in those waters? Might be cool islands that we can claim in the name of our king or queen. It might be buried treasure. It might be pirates. You literally could get sunk by pirates if you're not careful and you go to the wrong waters. Or the waters you go to are so bad you get sunk. I think that would be a cool like indie game mechanic where like you try and work with the map and the map needs to work with you, or the map needs to like be accurate at the end of the day to try and help you survive at the end of the day. I think that would be cool. Like I think that'd be a neat little mechanic if you can figure out, even in a multiplayer, if you can figure out how to make that a core mechanic and figure out how to make that like risk and reward. If you can balance out the risk and reward, I think that would be a really good mechanic. But I think something like that, or something like the inaccuracies, which could play well into RPGs, or just more things that like where maps try and tell a story. Like what I said, the central force is Vizima or Whiterun or something like that, where maps tie into the lore. And like maps don't explicitly tell you the lore, but you can figure it out as you look at the map and stuff like that. Maybe even something like okay, Subnautica didn't really have a map, but Subnautica had all these like cool little things like signals. I don't know if you've ever seen Subnautica gameplay. Like if you have this kind of like sonar thing that you can like detect stuff, and like you can pick up signals from dead transmissions from like ships that's been dead and stuff. But you can also pick up signals from like alien technology or like minerals and stuff like that. So the sonar paints a picture for you, but you don't know how it looks until you go there. It could be in a cave. It could be like in a. Don't bite my hand. It could be in a cave. It could be like in a ship. It could be in a container. It could be like right next to the bloody Leviathan. I think something like that again with a risk and reward system. That would be good. But yeah, I think that's all I've had to say about maps. Kind of one of my closeted favorite topics because of how useful it can be in gaming and how like often we do use it. So I'd like to see it being used more. But yeah, that's it, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. I hope you found it interesting as I did. Thank you again for Mr. Slowly who did join me. I hope he was also knowledged a bit more.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
Okay, and yeah, you guys keep well. Be sure to be on the lookout for more podcasts or more informative videos soon, as well as catch some of the more of the stuff we are going to be doing on the channel and stuff. But until then, thank you guys. You've been a wonderful bunch. I'll see you guys next time. You guys stay safe. We'll chat soon.
Later.
Okay, let me stop recording.